Hi guys, we're in Manchester today and with two very special guests. There's Colin Savage, who most of you know already, king of the Kippax writer, podcaster for Bolt from the Blue, City Matters committee member, and all-round good egg, ex-accountant. We won't hold that against him. We've got Kieran Maguire with us in the house today. Now he can tell you about him himself, but I'll briefly say he's at Liverpool University. He's a professor there rather than a big Liverpool fan. He supports Brighton, and you might have seen him on TV, heard him on the radio, read him in the papers. But Kieran, how about a little 30-second bio of you?
Well, I'm just a football fan with a very big calculator. I teach football finance at the university, and I've been doing that for about 5 or 6 years now. Used to be at Manchester Met. Liverpool wanted me because they knew I talked about football non-stop. And I've got the best job in the world. I get paid to talk about football. And it's sort of the media seem to have picked up on this as well. So that's why I'm irritatingly frequently seen and heard on TV and the radio.
I heard a rumour you're in about 20 different media outlets every week. Is that right?
Probably about that, yeah.
It's his target, yeah.
Well, apparently you can't get too much of a good thing.
Well, I was 6 o'clock this morning on Radio Kent. That shows how desperate I am to be heard on any topic to do with football and money.
Yeah, man after my own heart.
Yeah, good to hear. So what we're going to do today, we're going to talk about, well, since you've got 3 accountants in the room, we're going to talk about football finances. We're going to talk about FFP. We'll talk about the role of financial regulation in football. Talk about net spend, one of I think Colin's pet hates or pet topics at the moment. We'll talk about a little bit about the UEFA investigation into City. Talk about Liverpool. I think that's topical because they've not spent any money really this summer. And then I'm going to open it to the floor for anything else that's worthy of discussion. So we'll start off with a gentle introduction to financial fair play and why each of us believe it was introduced and how it's, why each of us believe it's evolved ever since. And we'll open the floor to Colin. You can have first bash at this.
Well, just quickly, if you take Michel Platini's words at face value, it was introduced to combat the problem of increasing debt at football clubs. Now, very quickly, that was the theory. The practice actually focuses more on revenue and expenditure, and we'll probably talk in a little bit more detail about why that's not a great way of measuring the financial health of a football club. Now, being City fan, of course, I'm naturally cynical about why the focus changed from debt to revenue and expenditure, because City had come along with a seemingly limitlessly wealthy owner who was prepared to spend whatever it took for City to break into the top group of clubs. So it does seem a little bit suspicious to those of a blue persuasion that this suddenly morphed from a debt management regulatory system into an expenditure management one.
How about you, Kieran?
Old money doesn't like new money. And the established elite in Europe, they didn't want to see another Manchester City. They were unhappy about just one arriving. PSG had done something very similar. Chelsea had also done the same. They'd broken into that cosy little cartel, broken through that glass ceiling that was the preserve of the big clubs. And we all know who we're talking about. So therefore, whilst they realised that perhaps it was a little bit too late to prevent another City or PSG arriving, they made damn sure that they would make sure that the rules would make it as difficult as possible. And therefore it's aimed at the likes of Wolves and clubs of that nature, who now have incredibly wealthy backers who want to take their clubs to the next level, and these rules are designed to prevent that.
Yeah, and my personal quick opinion is it wants to stop, like Kieran has said, new money. You had some of the big Italian clubs, their owners like Berlusconi, telling UEFA, telling Platini, we can't afford to keep spending the money we're spending. There has to be a limit, there has to be a cap. And in the end, UEFA kowtowed to some of the bigger clubs in Europe to start this spending cap, because the way the English league was going and with new clubs coming in, they were going to spend more and more money, and you had the old Italian clubs would not be able to compete. That's my personal opinion. So we'll move on. to what should be the role of financial regulation in football, and how should it protect clubs like Bolton and Bury, if at all?
Well, I think there is a role for having decried financial fair play. I think there is a role for financial regulation in football, because we've seen the plight of Bolton and Bury at the moment, and we've looked at clubs like Portsmouth and plenty of clubs, the plight of Blackpool and their ownership sucking money out of the club. So there really is a role for financial regulation in football, unless, of course, you subscribe to the theory that football is just a business, and it's no one's business to ensure that clubs manage themselves properly. It's their problem alone. Personally, I think football's too important, and we've seen too many examples of poor financial management. But for me, financial fair play focuses on the wrong things. It's the wrong process, the wrong mechanism for ensuring that regulation, because it focuses purely on revenue and expenditure, and it works on a 3-year rolling basis. So clubs could get into trouble over a course of a 3-year cycle, a third year of a third-year cycle. The example I always use is someone could buy a profitable club, run it okay for the first year, break even the second year, incur a huge loss in the third year, and the club is clearly going down the drain, but it could still pass financial fair play. So to me, it's wrong. You should be looking at cash flow. And clubs like Bolton and Bury, and even Manchester City back in 2008, before the Abu Dhabi takeover, had severe cash flow problems, which could have caused the clubs to collapse into administration. So for me, it's not about the profit and loss account, it's about cash flow and how you manage your cash.
I'd echo what Colin says. If you can't pay your bills, you're not going to survive. Now, what's different about football is that we've got many owners who are prepared to underwrite the losses. What we've seen in the Championship over the last 5 years, Championship is this incredible basket case of football, but is also incredibly exciting. Speaking as a fan of a club that has been in the Championships, it's a brilliant division to be in. It's incredibly unpredictable. But for every £100 that's coming through the door, clubs are spending 107 on wages. That's before you stick on the floodlights, that's before you mow the grass, that's before you even sign any players. So you're relying on club owners to underwrite those losses. If your club owner is rich and he's treating the club as a trophy asset, just like having a yacht or a supermodel wife, and the upkeep on those is very expensive, then exactly the same tends to happen with a football club. If the owner's rich, there's not a problem.
Yeah.
If you actually take a look at Bolton, the debts of Bolton are probably some of the smallest in the Championship, but if you can't afford to pay your bills, you're going to go bust regardless. But how you get around that is a lot much trickier. The EFL don't have the skill set to do it.
Yeah, I was going to ask, is it fair on the communities or the football fans? Because the football team is a huge part of the community in Bolton and Bury and all over the country. Is it fair on them, or is it just business? If someone goes bust, they go bust. Or should the EFL and the Premier League and everybody else be looking to safeguard those footballing communities?
How can you do it though? I think it's very well in theory, and I agree totally. Football club's heartbeat of a city, heartbeat of a town. It gives you a recognition. You know, if I go on holiday and I meet something, the first thing you say is, what football club do you support? It doesn't matter whether it's Bury or Bolton or even United. You can still have a conversation with them, and you can read a lot into the way that they talk about their club. The problem I see for the regulators is that even when they do try to come up with rules, you get owners who are wanting to sell quickly because they can't afford to run them anymore, and therefore we've seen what's happened with Bury. Club was sold for £1. Yeah. New owner didn't do the owners and directors test, and we're left with the mess that we've got at present. How can you stop that?
Any ideas? It's difficult.
You could have some sort of insurance bond where you've got to pay a bit like ABTA or something like that, and you can only take that money out when you sell the club if the EFL has been through the regulations. But that's going to restrict the number of people who are willing to buy clubs in the first place. And if you are desperate to sell, then you've got a problem with the old owner.